El doctor McNeil tiene un doctorado en física por la Universidad de California en Santa Cruz. Su investigación de posgrado la realizó en el Centro Europeo de Física de Partículas en Ginebra, Suiza, donde fue miembro de la colaboración experimental ALEF. McNeil tiene un gran interés en el estudio para la previsión integral del consumo global de energía por región, por país y por sector, de acuerdo a la modelación econométrica de las tasas de absorción de equipos y patrones de consumo de energía por unidad. Y yo propongo, con todo cariño, como siempre lo hago, que lo recibamos para que se anime con un aplauso. Muchas gracias.
I'll give this talk in English, pero estoy practicando mi español mucho en esta semana. Entonces, la próxima vez que voy a presentar en español, espero. Okay. So, some things that I would like to cover here, emphasize. The title is Energy Efficiency, Research, and Collaboration Opportunities. I think what I'd most like to emphasize and have a lot of discussion, and hopefully there's questions on, is the latter. My area of expertise and focus and research at Lawrence Berkeley Lab is in energy efficiency policy. That's what's brought me to work with colleagues here in the past, but we're looking to collaborate on many areas, so I'll just give some highlights there. What I want to try to answer in terms of questions here, for those that are not familiar with LBNL, what is Lawrence Berkeley National Lab and what areas do we cover? I'll just say here that there's many areas of common interest and expertise at our two institutions, and so it's a goal of mine here to understand more specifically what areas we have in common. There is a history. I am fortunate enough to have the history of working with IIE in the past, when it was still IIE, and I want to give a little background about what that history has been, but also what are some next steps that we're looking at immediately to collaborate on. And then finally, I have the great privilege of being asked by my laboratory directorate to lead an effort to build a Mexico energy group at Lawrence Berkeley Lab in the style of our very successful China energy group. And so I'd like to explain a little more something about what that means and how it involves collaborations with institutions like INEEL. And then finally, I hope we have a lot of discussion, and that this discussion really focuses on where we can collaborate in the future. So a quick overview of the laboratory. This is a picture from 1931 of our founder, Ernest Lawrence, and his team sitting atop the first cyclotron. Now, this piece of machinery was originally built underneath the campus of UC Berkeley in Berkeley, California. And this was, as you can see, fairly large collaboration of physicists for its time. And through his vision and guidance, this was really the formation of the idea of having a national laboratory in the United States. LBL is privileged to be the original national lab in the U.S. Another thing that we're quite proud of is that our history of producing Nobel Prize winners. All of the pictures in black and white, the early days were all in physics, in high energy physics, which is my background as well. We have a long history also of physicists doing energy, clean energy and energy policy research and energy efficiency research. Most recently, we have Nobelist Steve Chu, who became not only lab director but the Secretary of Energy for the Department of Energy in the United States. And then some of our most recent two Nobel Prizes are actually in cosmology. But I wanted to bring some attention to this, which is a personal area of pride for our area. These are the members of our institution that contributed to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. and thereby shared the Nobel Peace Prize with Al Gore for that work. So this is sort of an evolution of ours. The important thing here is this was an entire network of people that contributed to this, and this is where we really have made contributions, not only in the hard science areas, but specifically in taking the scientific community to the task of combating climate change. We're focused on discovery science, so somewhat basic research, but also very applied analysis, technology, and policy solutions. We're a fairly large institution by now with 4,000 employees with a budget of about $820 million per year. We've got 1,000 students, PhD students, postdoctoral fellows, and we have over 35 spin-off institutions, including many private companies that create thousands of jobs. We're just one of a network of national laboratories. And here's how our lab, just to give an idea of the different areas that we work in, it includes physics was the original emphasis. That's still very important, physics and fusion physics. In the past, I would say decade, we've really expanded in the area of biological sciences, and including things like the Joint Biofuels Institute, where we're actually trying to develop better, more environmentally friendly and less expensive fuels. Computing sciences, we have a very large supercomputing area, materials and chemistry, and then finally, the group that I come from is called the Energy Technology area. So our group is about 600 researchers, or our area is 600 researchers, and that's a budget of about $100 million per year. To drill down more about our area, here are our values, I think certainly shared here, which is, of course, scientific integrity first and foremost. Our currency is journal, major scientific journal publications. But at the same time, we have a very innovative focus. We're trying to create new technologies and new methodologies and new ways of looking at things. We want to have a strong impact. We measure our success on changes in markets and government policies. A sense of urgency is important, and this is really very closely tied to the climate challenge. We feel like it's important to underline that the things that we want to do and can do need to be done now if we have any chance of avoiding the greatest negative impacts of climate change. And then finally, what brings me here is we have a strong history and philosophy and value of collaboration and partnership. We do not wish to be a siloed institution, but we gain a lot of strength from partnerships with universities. First and foremost, we have a very strong relationships with UC Berkeley, UC Davis, but also private industry, and increasingly international institutions that are sort of parallel institutions to ours. We work in three main divisions: buildings and urban systems, which is about the built environment and very energy efficiency focused, about building systems, about connecting buildings to the grid, about building metering and control technology, energy analysis and environmental impacts, which is my group, which is focuses on informing government policies about energy efficiency, renewable energy, grid integration, things of that sort. And then finally, energy storage and distributed resources, which includes microgrids, but we have a very strong battery basic research program. So I'll just quickly go through each one of the, have one slide for each one of these areas. And here I would hope that people are looking for the keywords that connect to the research that you're doing, that we can have more of a discussion afterwards and even follow up on what are these areas. I really wanted to just sort of highlight that. So I won't go through these individually, but I'll just I'll just show them. But I do want to highlight that you do see in the Windows area, for example, we are actually building new technologies. Commercial building systems has a lot of deployment projects, as does residential building systems. So we're doing really quite a sustainable federal operations is more of an analysis and advisory function. So we have several different kinds of functions, from basic technologies to very applied. I wanted to highlight this because this is a really great new innovation that we have. It happens to be sitting in the parking lot of the building that I work in. So my office is right here. And luckily, this installation did not obstruct my view of the Golden Gate Bridge, which I'm very happy about. But it is a great new, really sort of concrete, literally, tactile laboratory environment. The idea here with the Flex Lab is that to create a real working laboratory that can test building materials, building equipment, and building controls. So if you are a research institution or a private company who's just created a new window treatment, you can actually take out the windows here and replace it with your windows and do all the measurements. Everything's metered up. This front installation actually turns so that you can get the alignment to match an actual building that you're working on. You can switch out the HVAC system. It's for HVAC commissioning. So it's a complete self-contained laboratory measure system at a system level building technologies. And it's meant to be a user facility. I should emphasize that. It's not built primarily for Berkeley lab researchers, but it's meant to be used by visitors and other institutions. Another area I wanted to highlight is our U.S.-China Clean Energy Research Center. This is a bilateral initiative between the national governments of China and the United States, where each government has put in something like $10 million to support this, and each government has assigned a research institution to lead. We are the lead for the U.S., and we operate in a sort of advisory and secretariat capacity. We're not doing primarily all of the research. The research is actually done by other institutions and private partners. Here's a list of all the private partners. So this is a buildings efficiency, buildings technology specific effort, but it has the elements of, it's international in focus. It has matching funds from both governments, and it's inherently from the start a public-private partnership with the private companies doing most of the work and benefiting from the patents. This first CERC was focused on buildings. We now have a new one that is focused on water and the water energy nexus that we're very excited about. So my personal view is that this is a model that could be very easily replicated in a U.S.-Mexico context. Energy storage and distributed resources, as I said, I've already talked to some people today that I think a lot of this might be relevant to, including electric vehicle to grid integration, microgrid plannings, as well as a very strong, as I mentioned, basic research battery area. And this is finally the area that I work in. We have two, as I mentioned, two international groups, the China Energy Group, which has been around since 1988, our International Energy Studies Group, where I am located, which is a younger group. And then energy efficiency standards is a great emphasis for us, and really kind of the way in which I was able to ultimately collaborate with IIE, which I'll talk more about. We support the U.S. Federal Appliance Standards Program in a big way. We do extensive analysis for all their regulations. Electricity markets and policy, which involves really advising the U.S. government's way of advising regulators of utilities in the United States. An indoor environment program, which is about really what happens inside a building in terms of toxics, which is really a basic research kind of area. And then sustainable energy systems, which does a lot of modeling, life cycle analysis, and air quality studies. In our International Energy Department, I should be conscious of time, International Energy Department, we've merged the two international groups so that we can coordinate better, because we realize that there are cross-cutting issues that we can work on that have been really well developed in the China area that we'd all like to benefit from. We generally support national and regional governments in informing effective decision-making in the energy policy area, especially low emissions development. So we're the only group at the Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory whose part of our mission is actually to provide technology solutions and policy analysis solutions for governments other than the U.S. government. So obviously China is one of the governments we worked with. I have personally also worked here in Mexico, Brazil, Chile. We have a large group in India that works in India, Vietnam, etc. And in addition to directly supporting, so I should just say that is the kind of work that I have been able to work with in Mexico, together with Hugo Perez and Anita Sanchez of IAE. That work was really directly supporting the Mexican government through the CONUE, or CONAI originally, the Mexican Efficiency Agency. But in addition to that, we want to act as a connector of researchers across borders. That's not necessarily directly supporting the governments, but just fostering collaboration so that we can make connections and take advantage of lessons learned on both sides for the mutual benefit. And that means that I'm really here representing not just my department, but the lab as a whole. And the primary role that I have within this department is to connect researchers like yourself to researchers beyond my own department at the lab. Our group is, I'm the oldest member of our group. I'll turn 50 next year. So we are a very young group. Most of the people are in their 20s and 30s. And we're also highly international, which you would expect. There's maybe 3 or 4 U.S.-born researchers out of 20, and that's been a great benefit to us. The research topics we do are cross-cutting R&D, capacity building, what is generally characterized as capacity building. Appliances and equipment is a great strength of ours, but also buildings, we do a lot of electric power and renewable energy studies, particularly in India, industrial energy efficiency, and increasingly transportation with an emphasis on electric vehicles and grid impacts of electric vehicles. Okay, so some of the history of our collaboration so far. We did 3 studies together, as I said, supporting CONUE on appliance efficiency standards. In 2006, we did a study of the impacts of the electricity savings from the first 4 NOMs, which are Normas Oficiales Mexicanas, which are the mandatory appliance efficiency regulations by the Mexican government. We followed that study 4 years later, quite a significant gap in time, with a techno-economic analysis of proposed standards for refrigerators and air conditioners. And then in just last year, we finished an analysis of the impacts of a second round of standards. One thing that's is important to note about these standards is that the Mexican government has had for a long time a policy of aligning regulations with U.S. standards as much as possible. So there's a very natural area of collaboration here. And then, those are the ones we've done so far. All of these tend to be either forward-looking analysis of regulations or impacts of regulations. And it's really been emphasized to us by CONUE that the evaluation of the impacts of that program is a very high priority to them, and something that they're looking to INEEL to help provide. And if we can be facilitators of that, we'd be very happy. So on that note, we made a proposal yesterday, in fact, to engage in another impacts analysis that combines some top-down and bottom-up analyses that have already been done, puts them together, tries to evaluate in a more tangible and precise way the impacts of this program, but then more importantly, has a forward-looking aspect that considers not only upcoming pledges to align regulations throughout North America, also with the Canadians, but has an eye towards the nationally determined contributions, that is, the climate commitments that we've all just signed. So briefly, this is an example of the kind of work we just finished last year for refrigerator impacts. So you see the data here is we're drawing from certification data that CONACYT had available through the ANSE, the regulatory or the certification body. And we're looking at individual models here, tracing back over time, all the way back to 1997, to actually see the certified energy consumption, in this case for refrigerators. And you see a very clear signal from this policy. This policy very clearly reduced the energy consumption of the average refrigerator. And what we do here is, once we've established this this difference or this improvement, we're able to roll that up into national level impacts. And I can show some of those here. These are the national impacts of just refrigerator and air conditioner standards. You can see the green bars are one class, the combination refrigerator freezer class. That's become the standard here in Mexico, and you can see that's providing the bulk of the savings. For people not familiar with this type of graph, the reason why you have this strong increase, linear increase, is that this represents that the amount of stock that is affected by the standards is increasing over time. So you pass the standard in 2002, you get 1 million new refrigerators into the market, but then in 2003, those refrigerators are still operating, and you have another 1 million refrigerators saving energy in the market. So that's how you have this characteristic graph. The bottom line for CONACYT is that by 2014, just these two regulations essentially avoided 2 power plants, is the way that you can look at it. 2 500 megawatt power plants did not have to be built, or could be retired, but that's a really very effective measurement of the impacts of these kind of regulations. In addition to 24 million metric tons of carbon dioxide, and maybe, you know, for some audiences, really the real bottom line is 40,000 million Mexican pesos saved in electricity bills to Mexican consumers. So not small impacts, we would say. The proposed analysis schematically, this shows the blue line is residential electricity consumption over the last 15 years. The red line is the trend extrapolated over the same period. What CONACYT has done is measured the difference here and estimated this as savings of the program. So this turns out to be 30 terawatt hours by 2015. Really quite a significant achievement, and also leading towards a really large slowdown in the growth of electricity consumption in Mexican households. In addition to this, the analysis that I just referred to, we were able to account for 6 terawatt hours just on 2 products. So what we'd like to do is first refine this estimate of the counterfactual, which was done with a relatively simplistic trend, try to get that more refined by disaggregating. And second of all, we'd like to break down the savings, account for the savings by each individual standard in the program, in addition to other programs such as the Illumex lighting program, the change to daylight savings time, etc. So that's just a quick overview there. And in addition to this, as I mentioned, we'd like to go into the future, do some forecasting of what we think the business as usual in this sector will be, what we think that the next round of regulations and other programs can achieve, and how that contributes to the climate goals, most importantly. Okay, so some words about what an LBNL Mexico Energy Group is and how that relates to our future collaboration. The history is, as I said, we have experience working with most of the most important players in the Mexican energy or energy policy environment. We have this model of success that down the hall from me, we have this China Energy Group that's now grown to 20 researchers plus 25 visitors from China at all times, and is most importantly very respected and very impactful. The China Energy Group was really instrumental in informing both sides in the climate negotiations that led to the global negotiations in Paris. So if people aren't aware, there was really a lot of work that happened between the US and China to agree on targets that really set the foundation to allow Paris to go forward. And we're lucky that our China group had a great involvement in there. So our mission is to build collaborative relationships and research projects with Mexican institutions in order to pursue world-class science that contributes to Mexican and U.S. energy and climate goals. The approach for us is always long-term relationships, sustained efforts, and deep mutual understanding. So we don't want to have the role of what our China group likes to call fly-ins, people who come in, do a workshop, do a presentation, and then leave, and that's it. We're really in it for the long haul. We will be there beyond the current, U.S. government, administrations. Much as you are, we're a long-term organization. We're here for building a long-term capacity and long-term relationships, and the strategies that we're most interested in developing joint research projects, developing a diverse network of partners on either side and sponsors. We are cognizant that we, as an international group, cannot rely exclusively on U.S. Department of Energy funding, so we have diversified quite a bit in our sponsorship. And then finally, the exchange of students and researchers is critical. We would like that people are able to spend some time in Berkeley, and that we would have researchers and students that were able to spend significant time here in Cuernavaca. So, why a Mexico Energy Group? For many reasons. The U.S.-Mexico relationship has risen to the top of priorities for U.S. government. And in addition to that, the California, Mexico, we're lucky to be located in California, which has made strong efforts to build stronger ties with Mexico, including an MOU between the state of California and SENER. The time feels right for us for many reasons, which I think most of us, I haven't gotten a lot of argument about that. It seems clear. Our mission is to bring the best scientific solutions to bear in order to reconstitute the energy system on both sides. So we are cognizant, we look at that we are living in a dramatic transformation of the energy system globally, and that needs the best possible research. And that we believe that we can find collaborative areas of research that really, is greater than the sum of our parts. I just threw out last night, what a 5-year goal would be for me is really sustained effort. So we know that the progress we have in place will continue the following year, and then 2 years and 5 years down, and that the relationships are strong. And I want to keep emphasizing this. It has to be about relationships between institutions on each side of the border. So I think this is my last slide, and then we can have questions and discussion. So given mutual areas of strength and a critical role in supporting our respective governments and clean energy research and analysis, I have always believed, but believe more than ever, that INEEL and LBNL are really natural parallel institutions and natural for collaboration. So the goal here is to expand greatly on the previous collaboration, including we've got a relatively moderately sized proposal on the table, but to greatly expand on that, and to do that across the range of both labs, far beyond the work that we've done together in the past. So possible next steps that I'm looking for input here are a matching of areas of mutual interest across the laboratories, and to develop concrete proposals for collaborative research projects. So I've just spent the last 2 hours, with some of your research, and it's already obvious that there are several potentially very interesting areas of collaboration. Next, we should seek mechanisms, for example, funding mechanisms on both sides to facilitate these projects through actually, funded staff, but also, the smaller lifts of travel funds and stipends and things, so that we can start this exchange sooner rather than later. And then finally, and I hope this discussion leads to a nomination of staff on each side to spend some time at each other's respective institutions. And visiting researchers could include graduate students, postdoctoral fellows, and also senior scientific staff. So I think, right. Last slide. This is the new slide that I added this morning. Some specific, what I call proposal seeds, and this is not even necessarily concepts, but just ideas, things to talk about in the energy efficiency policy space. We have this next project that's kind of teed up that we can work on proposals for. But also possibly investigation of some new data resources that we developed at the lab, specifically in the energy efficiency, appliance efficiency space. What I call horizon studies, such as Konui really emphasized to us yesterday, that they see that a big change in the markets that they regulate in terms of what's called the Internet of Things. This is already clearly part of your research here. How do we deal from an efficiency perspective with an onslaught of new features, new product types that are responsive and dynamic and don't act in the simplistic ways that the old appliances used to do, that they're either on or off. Now that's really, we have much more dynamic energy system within people's homes. Everyone is aware of this, but nobody has, I think, yet really captured all of the aspects of this. So we're sort of being asked by Konui to see if we can look into this. And then the other thing, more generally, you're aware of the clean energy innovation centers here in Mexico, of course. The Energy Efficiency Innovation Center we believe is on its way. Possibly. I don't want to speak for anyone in the Mexican government, but it seems like a natural next step. And that includes not just technologies, but the entire energy efficiency ecosystem. Energy efficiency sometimes suffers from being too diverse. There's too many parts to this puzzle, from equipment, real technology level things, to markets, getting adoption and mass production markets, to the regulatory structure, to financing is a major barrier in energy efficiency. So a project that looks at all of these things holistically and tries to identify particular areas, needs within the Mexican energy efficiency ecosystem, I think would be very welcome and fruitful. And then finally, beyond energy efficiency, energy efficiency is my focus as a researcher, but I really want to be much broader to that, and have first exchanges of researchers in multiple areas through visits and talks. I just had a lot of that this morning. It was a really excellent exchange that we had. But I think it would be great if I started to connect with other researchers in our area who came and gave presentations like this one. And likewise, that we start to identify, possible study tours where people can come to Berkeley and talk to, researchers in multiple areas. I think that first step could be incredibly fruitful towards serious proposal development. And then the other next step, I think, is this, to do sort of between our institutions as a whole, to do this, what I would call matchmaking analysis, where I've started to do holistically, but try to systematically understand areas where we have overlap and synergies and maybe, particular opportunities. I think we're looking for particular opportunities between that are unique to not only the U.S.-Mexico relationship, but also the the California-Mexico relationship. So that's what I have. Thank you very much, and thanks. This is the best part, the questions. So,
Muy bien, pues en este momento abrimos la sesión de preguntas y respuestas. Les pedimos levantar la mano y que nos digan, su nombre, si son de aquí del instituto o de dónde vienen, y pues les agradeceremos que sus preguntas sean concretas, por favor. ¿Quién dice yo? ¿No? ¿Sí? ¿Acá? ¿Xochitl?
Antonio, sí.
Thank you for the presentation, Mike. I want to go directly to some specific points that you say. We have a program to funding postdocs. We have sent 3 postdocs right now, our institute to University of California, and we can send at least other 3 more postdocs to Berkeley lab. This is one of the things, and but I want to know what are the conditions, what are the requirements that you have to receive postdocs. I think that a very good starter point is to select a project and send people to level postdoc to go with you, and maybe some we have funds for that. But also, I think that we can receive postdocs from you here in Mexico. Also, UNAM has funding projects. We need to apply for them, but it's possible. Do you think that this is a good option to starting point?
Thank you very much for that question. Absolutely. As I was saying earlier this morning, postdocs are a very important resource for us for growing programs, because of course in our scheme they're relatively inexpensive, but they also they can be very focused on a new research area without other demands, institutional demands, and they publish a lot, or they help create a lot of publications, which are usually the foundation for really launching a research area in a big way. So we love postdocs. The barriers, I think, for once we've done the connection, and as you mentioned, we have done this, in some areas. As we do more of this connection, where we think there's a common research goal, and we think it makes sense to have a researcher in Berkeley, I think that the barrier from our point institutionally is quite low. And the key is, as you also mentioned, there's a funding mechanism established on the Mexican side. Now it's part of my learning curve to try to understand the mechanics and the ins and outs of how to work that efficiently. But if if that's not a barrier, then I think that we can really get far quickly using postdocs. And so postdocs can do a year of work, and that results in a significant proposal that we then have a pipeline for on both sides. That could be extremely useful to us. Now, you mentioned the possibility of postdocs or students coming here, and you also said that there's a mechanism for funding for that, and that if that is not a barrier, then also there I don't see now that involves us working with the institutions, the universities. It involves us working through UC Berkeley or UC Davis or other universities to identify those candidates, because they will be just getting their PhDs. Although probably not exclusively. We probably have some postdocs already at the lab that could do a year in Mexico. If that, if the funding can be done, and I don't know how money needs to cross borders or institutions, but if that works, then I also think that would be a great possibility. And this may be the same person. One postdoc could come to spend a year at Berkeley and then come back here, maybe. So thank you. Yes.
My name is Jaime Rao from CENER. CENER is a research center just beside the INEEL. I'm the Power Electronics Group leader in the center. I suppose you agree with me that power electronics has an important role in terms of the goals that we want to reach in terms of high efficiency energy conversion systems. Mm-hmm. We have a very strong group, probably the biggest in the country. In probably 2 months, we will launch a test laboratory for power converter applied for energy saving and renewable energy converters. It really will be a pleasure for us to establish a more formal contact with you. Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much for the question and the statement. And something that I also want to mention here is that because we work in a network of national laboratories, we are collaborating and seek to collaborate more with our other national lab partners, and that includes the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, which has been, I think, a partner here and a very has had a lot of involvement in Mexico. So some of these areas, I should say, that involve power systems and the renewable technology per se, we may not have the research area in-house in the same way that you do, but we may be able to foster that partnership with NREL and other labs. I just want to make that clear that we're considering broad collaborations on both sides and working collaboratively with our other national lab partners. Other questions?
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon. I'm from AMEXGEN. It's an association of enterprises who are involved in energy efficiency systems. I have a questions about the work of the laboratory here in your laboratory here in Mexico. I would like to know how is the experience working with another institutions or associations, international or national, who are working in this topic too. For example, I have known some other governments like German who are working to introduce new technologies, materials, or create new programs about energy efficiency. Have you been involved in as laboratory, as a group in this, with these other groups?
We definitely do work on projects that have collaboration from other groups, including other countries. You mentioned Germany. We have worked together with GIZ from Germany quite a bit, although it's more in parallel than really in a coordinated way. So I would say the China experience is one where we've really been able to form a partnership through Chinese institutions that can do real projects that have the benefit of industry on that side. And so I would say that we will have our instinct is to work with institutions that can then work directly with private sector in other countries in collaborations such as the China Clean Energy Research Center. Does that answer your question, or? Yeah. Más o menos. Okay. Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Ulises Cano. I work here in the INEEL. We're a group working with electrochemistry, conversion of energy devices. That includes fuel cells, batteries, electrolyzers. I would like to ask you, what would be the next step in order to identify a topic of mutual interest and find this matching point before we start to look for funding mechanisms? Can we get in touch with you, or can we start from you mentioned that there's an agreement already signed between CENER and Berkeley. Are there any more formal mechanisms, or can we just go back to our computers and write to you a message and start talking between the two sides?
Yeah, thanks again for the question. That's the best question, I think, is how do we go forward here? And I think it's the latter. I think it's informal. My role as the new director of a brand new, I should emphasize brand new, Mexico Energy Group is precisely to give you my email address so that you can point me to your website, or just give me some sampling of your publications so that I understand your areas broadly. You can, of course, go to our website and find out what you can about who the researchers are closest to you. But then I would connect you to those people, see if there's a match, and then put you in touch directly. And then I think, once you've read each other's papers and had a phone call, the really important thing is that we arrange some way that you can have face-to-face meeting before the formal process of asking for postdocs or other proposals. I think that's what's going to work. But I hope without too much effort on each side, we can really identify areas of mutual opportunity.
Gracias. Le pedimos al doctor Fernández que pase para entregarle un reconocimiento.
Okay.
This is a picture for our bulletin.
Okay. Should we be in front of a banner?
Brindémosle un fuerte aplauso, por favor. Gracias, muchas gracias. Y gracias a todos ustedes por su presencia. Así llegamos al final de este evento. Que tengan buenas tardes.